A bombastic statement by Helmut Marko is causing a real earthquake in the Formula One paddock. The Red Bull consultant has just stated that he does not regret any of the severe decisions he has implemented during his trajectory and that he would act identically again. However, is there really nothing he regrets? The revelation will shock you. Having completed 82 years, Marko is recognized as Red Bull's relentless executioner. This Austrian has built a reputation that sends chills down any driver's spine when receiving a call from him. And there are plenty of reasons for this. Red Bull represents the only team on the grid that operates two teams simultaneously in Formula One, directly controlling 8 cockpits under Marko's supervision. This situation gives him enormous influence in the driver's market. Since Max Verstappen's arrival at Red Bull Racing in 2016, the Dutchman has already counted 6 different team partners. 6. To put into perspective what this means, other teams like McLaren preserve constant pairs for entire years. At Red Bull, the rotation is simply absurd. Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Sergio Pérez, Liam Lawson, and Yuki Tsunoda. All tried their luck. Very few managed to stay. The most severe episode happened with Pierre Gasly. The French driver lasted only 12 races as Verstappen's teammate before being relegated to Racing Bulls, known at the time as Toro Rosso. Just 12 races, less than half of a complete championship. And the most surprising aspect is that Gasly later won a race, demonstrating that he had pace. However, in Marko's perspective, speed alone is not enough. Now consider Liam Lawson's situation. The New Zealander reached the main team at the end of the 2024 season, but remained only 2 weekends before returning to Racing Bulls. Only 2 weekends. He didn't even have the opportunity to adapt to the car seat. Red Bull's second team demonstrates even more severity. Drivers like Sébastien Buemi, Jaime Alguersuari, Jean-Éric Vergne, Daniel Kvyat, and Brendan Hartley passed through there and currently don't even participate in Formula One anymore. Many of them possessed extraordinary talent. Vergne, for example, won 2 titles in Formula E. Kvyat even won races. But from Marko's perspective, this has no relevance. And what is Marko's own position on this issue? He shows himself inflexible. I remain firm in the decisions I implemented. According to his view, more than 95% of drivers who failed to establish themselves in the Red Bull program obtained successful careers in other modalities, Formula E, WEC, DTM, all earning incomes much higher than they would obtain in conventional professions. However, here comes the most fascinating aspect of the narrative. Marko acknowledges that there is one decision he would modify if he could go back in time. And it's not what you imagine. He doesn't regret dismissing Gasly so promptly. He doesn't regret having offered few opportunities to Lawson. His regret is completely different. In 2021, when Red Bull needed to select a teammate for Verstappen, they had 2 main alternatives under consideration: Sergio Pérez and Nico Hülkenberg. At that time, Hülkenberg was away from Formula One and worked as a television commentator. Pérez came from an inconsistent season at Racing Point, but had obtained a historic victory at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Marko reveals that they were already holding conversations with Hülkenberg. Negotiations were progressing. The German had everything to be selected, but then Pérez's victory in Sakir occurred, and the whole situation transformed. Red Bull was impressed with the Mexican's performance and chose to bet on him. Currently, years later, Marko admits that it was possibly a mistake. Hülkenberg represents a safe guarantee of scoring points, declares the Austrian. In our car, he would also be competing for prominent positions. And there's more. Marko believes that the Verstappen and Hülkenberg partnership would have worked better because both get along very well personally. This confession from Marko surprises for various reasons. Initially, because Pérez helped Verstappen win 2 world titles, especially in 2021, when he was essential in the dispute against Lewis Hamilton. Second, because admitting error is not something usual in Red Bull's DNA. But was it really a mistake? Let's examine the data. Pérez achieved 13 victories in Formula One, 5 of them with Red Bull. Hülkenberg, on the other hand, never won a race in the category, despite having had competitive cars in some seasons. Pérez also proved to be an exceptional driver in the rain, and someone who manages to extract the maximum from cars in extreme situations. On the other hand, Hülkenberg has always been recognized for his regularity. He rarely makes serious mistakes and has a history of scoring points even with average cars. At the current Sauber, he is demonstrating exactly that. At 37 years old, he continues to be one of the most reliable drivers on the grid. The issue is that Red Bull has always prioritized drivers capable of winning races, not just scoring points. And in this, Pérez fit the profile better. But Marko seems to have changed his opinion about what really matters in a second driver. The timing of this statement is also not casual. With Pérez out of Red Bull and being speculated for the new Cadillac team, Marko is analyzing the alternatives to be Verstappen's teammate in 2026. The main candidates are Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar. Tsunoda has already remained in the Red Bull ecosystem for years and has shown constant evolution. Hadjar is the great talent of the Red Bull Academy and may represent the future of the team. But does either of them have the profile that Marko now declares he values? Or will he continue with the severe policy as always? Marko's statement also raises a broader question about Red Bull's philosophy. Are they really forming drivers for Formula One, or just using talents as disposables until finding the next Verstappen? Because it is a fact that many talented drivers have passed through the Red Bull program without receiving real chances to develop. Looking to the future, Red Bull needs to make an important decision. With Verstappen entering the most mature phase of his career, they need stability by his side. It doesn't make sense to continue alternating drivers every 6 months. Mercedes itself understood this when it kept Hamilton and Bottas together for 5 years. Marko's confession about Hülkenberg may represent a sign that Red Bull is rethinking its strategy. Perhaps they have realized that regularity is worth more than that occasional victory that leads nowhere. Perhaps they have understood that destroying the confidence of young drivers is not the best way to form champions. But knowing Helmut Marko, it is more likely that he will continue executing exactly what he has always executed. Because in the end, Red Bull has won 6 constructors' titles and 7 drivers' titles with this severe philosophy. Why change a formula that works? What do you think? Should Marko really have selected Hülkenberg instead of Pérez? Or is this just a reflection of someone who is observing the past with different eyes? And more importantly, do you believe that Red Bull should modify its severe policy with drivers or continue being relentless? Leave your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to not miss any news from the Formula One world.